Ladies and gentlemen, sharpen your pencils and knead your erasers, for tonight is a night of sketches and wretches. In this corner, daring to dream and dreaming to scheme, Freddy's Nightmares, and the challenger whose best drawing may well be a blank, Bone Chillers. Put your drawing hands together for Put Up Your Spooks! This week's theme:
Comic Books, Part 2, 2022 Comic-Con Spectacular. Hey, this is Jeff. I'm repping the 80s.
And I'm Ryan, drawing upon all my favorite 90s shows. For
the theme of comic books, I present Freddy's Nightmares, the Art of Death. Jack is a skinny twerp with a crush on Joan, hot co-ed at his college. He draws her obsessively, and he's hoping that if she could just see his talent, she'd leave her jock boyfriend Ron. Well, that's what his best friend Pete swears will happen. But what Pete really wants is satirical cartoons for the school paper. Later on, we see Jack. He's at the gym, and he is stalk/drawing Joan. And she actually sneaks a peek at his artwork, and she's impressed. She really likes it. But then Big Ron steps in, and he has two of his huge bodybuilder buddies lift Jack up so that he can slowly pants him in front of the crowd, sort of sexually humiliating him and emasculating him. Good move. Strong. Right out the gate. Strong bully energy. So Jack goes home and draws a 3-panel gag strip about Ron pumping up his groin until it explodes. And guess what? It's a hit. It is popular with all of the jocks. All the jocks, but Ron, that is. So Ron bitch slaps Jack and then stomps on his hand so he'll never be able to draw disrespectful cartoons ever again.
And he's like, see how well you draw with hamburger for a hand or whatever, but he doesn't actually really hurt him that bad.
He doesn't hurt him, and Jack
fine.
Is fine.
Yeah.
Perhaps that's a clue that we're quite a surreal nightmare we're living in, because we cut to Freddy Krueger, the man himself, who tells us that
Jack's about to enter my drawing room, where I'm sure he'll find plenty of inspiration.
So Jack goes home and admires a new character he's created. The Phantom. Relentless. Powerful. A merciless avenger. He lives in the steam tunnels under campus, waiting. It's just a little soliloquy. He kind of pops off to himself, but we found out earlier that he was popping off to his own drawings of Joan, so I guess that's not too surprising. Jack puts his head down on his drafting table for a weirdo nap, and when he wakes up, there's a blank, phantom-shaped hole in the poster, ghastly grinner style. He touches it, and it begins to glow. Just then, out of the shadows, a hand in a fingerless leather driving glove reaches out and grabs his shoulder. It's the Phantom! And we know this is true because he screams to Jack's face,
"Relentless, powerful, merciless avenger!"
Talk about being in a different show from everyone else.
I need to emphasize this. The Phantom laughs more than Freddy.
He's having a great time.
Which is a bonkers statement. That should be a paradoxical, no character can laugh more than Freddy, and yet the Phantom is determined to try.
I feel like off camera they were just like, bigger, no, bigger. And he was like, really? And they were like, bigger.
So the Phantom was played by the guy who was Vlad in Howling 2.
And also
Your Sister's a Werewolf,
convict
a.k.a.
in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And he's not bad. He's pretty, In Pee-wee's Big Adventure, he was understated compared to this.
He is giving it 110%.
8,010%.
8,010%. He really carried this lackluster episode. So Jack's freaking out, but the Phantom explains that Jack created him with his raw talent, and that if he wants revenge on Ron, all he has to do is picture Ron in his mind and draw it. So Jack starts picking up vibes. He goes to his drawing table, draws Ron on a treadmill. The Phantom materializes in the gym, and soon the treadmill is slick with blood. Jack wakes up and finds the cartoon of Ron split in half. Now, Pete loves this because he thinks it's going to be like a great follow-up to the exploding groin
Pete,
or something. I don't know.
A.K.A. Styles from Teen Wolf 2.
Teen Wolf 2.
Teen Wolf TOO. And he's just like, yeah, this will be great. This will be great for my next expose. And you're like, what?
He
What are you
loves
talking about?
all these weird cartoons that have nothing to do with anything, but he thinks like they're satirical and they're like the New Yorker.
Wow. I guess a high schooler would.
They're in college.
Oh, jeez.
So Pete is loving this cartoon of Ron's body is split in half, but just then they're interrupted by sirens. Ron's body is being wheeled away, and some kid wanders over and is like, "Freak accident. Guess one of the machines tore him in half."
I was like, oh, he's going to speed up and shoot off and hit the wall. And he got sucked under and left a blood smear.
If he got sucked under or the Phantom ripped him in half or disemboweled him, we really don't know. Jack, is so freaked out that the thing he drew came true. So he runs away and then he just smashes into Joan. And he's like, oh, can I walk you home? And she's like, yes, that would be nice. And she's helping him pick up his stuff. And she finds the drawing. So she hauls off and bitch slaps him. And screams at him for being so ghoulish as to draw his bully's graphic murder. Jack is bummed out. He goes home, and wouldn't you know it, his boy, the Phantom, is there. And he tells Jack to draw Joan getting abducted. It's really weird. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But the Phantom is kind of like egging him on to prove Joan wrong. And when we next see Joan, she's showering in some kind of weird shower prison. It's like filled with these multi-headed industrial cylinders that like blast water out. It's like if 100 people needed to shower simultaneously in one room, this is how you do it.
College, baby.
Very, very strange. Phantom shows up, grabs Joan, puts her in a small cage, and then just starts lambasting her and accusing her of she has all these advantages and she uses them to hurt others by not paying attention to them, and he's going to strip away all of that, real crazy incel talk. So Jack wakes up and he goes to the shower prison to look for Joan. He's caught snooping around by another girl who bitch slaps him and says that Joan has gone missing. So Jack once again goes home because there's only 3 locations in this episode. And when he looks at the last drawing, it explodes. And from the scorched paper, a distended fist oozes out and snatches him down into the cartoon, into the Phantom's steam tunnels. Jack is furious. He didn't want Joan to get abducted, even though he drew her getting taken away and chained up in a little cage. And the Phantom is not taking orders anymore. So now the Phantom bitch slaps Jack. He calls him a sniveling weakling and a coward. Jack's got to think fast. He only has 10 minutes to do something while the Phantom slowly walks forward, laughing hysterically for a full 10 minutes. What does Jack do? He whips out a little pocket sketch pad and he draws a hole in the floor. And wouldn't you know it, Looney Tunes style, Phantom falls in. He's hanging on just by his fingertips. And then Jack mercilessly erases the Phantom's fingers, sending him to his doom. Jack opens the cage. He's about to free Joan when suddenly he sees his reflection. For some reason, he's dressed up like the Phantom. He has the Phantom mask and cowl. Joan is screaming when she sees him. She's freaking out, and he's telling her, it's not my fault. It was the Phantom. And she says, no, there is no Phantom. It was you, Jack. It was you all along. Just then we hear his buddy Pete's voice. He's looking for Jack. And when Jack looks up, there's a huge square hole in the ceiling. And we're looking up at a giant Pete who seems to be looking down at the cartoon panel. And Jack is screaming to get his attention. And when the camera pulls out into his room, we see that Pete is looking at a copy of today's newspaper, which says on the headline, "Missing co-ed found, police nab artist captor And then the panel shows Jack dressed as the Phantom screaming up for help. The end. Smash cut to Freddy in a beret, painting a portrait of the Phantom, who he says is one of his buddies. So we're widening out the Freddyverse.
Before I knew, I was like, oh man, he doesn't, how is he manifesting these drawings? He doesn't have
Magic pencil.
He didn't get an Eerie number 2 pencil.
He's not taking boner pills.
No boner pills, no Eerie number 2,
Calamity
nothing.
style.
But then, of course, I guess it was all in his head, except then he can still see out of his drawing table as his buddy Styles from Teen Wolf 2 comes to the room and looks around. And
I'll do you one better. He's already been caught by the police.
Yeah.
But he's still living
still
inside
stuck in
the drawing, looking out.
So he's just had a complete mental break, and
it could be that he's had a mental break.
He's imagining
and
everything.
He thinks he's the Phantom.
Like he's in the ambulance in a straitjacket being carted away, raving, "No, look in the drawing! I'm in the drawing!"
Yeah. I do like the twist that, this guy this self-proclaimed nice guy, if she only knew how talented I was.
Yeah.
We find out, all that creepy stalkery behavior is because he's a
creepy stalker.
Yeah.
It was the only good thing about the episode. It was a good twist that made sense and was way ahead of its time.
Exactly. So props to Freddy on that one. I loved the Phantom's performance, but he laughed approximately 10 times too much. It was
8,010 times too much.
But I did like, we're connoisseurs at this point. This is Comic Books Part 2. We've seen all sorts of variations of drawings come to life or things popping out of drawings, people drawing things into reality. And I did like when the drawing went up in flames and then the arm reached out through the panel and grabbed him.
Yeah, that was cool.
And that's all I have to say about Freddy's Nightmare, The Art of Death.
Enough said. My submission for Comic Book Day was actually a Jeff submission. A show I'd never heard about, and possibly thankfully, Bone Chillers. I don't know how this one slipped past me in the 90s, but I guess, so we didn't see the first, the pilot episode, obviously, so we have no setup, we know nothing about the show.
This is Season 1, Episode 1.
This is Season 1, Episode 1?
This is Episode 1.
Oh my god,
this gives you everything you need to know about the Bone Chillers universe.
There are four main kids, Brian, Fitz, Lexi, and Sarah is played by
a young Linda Cardellini.
Thank you, Linda Cardellini. I spaced out. Who's a cute gothy chick, which was the only cool thing about the episode.
How dare you?
Or the only thing that made kind of sense. So Brian and Fitz are skinny twerps who write this weird comic book about this onion man fighting a gladiator or something, and they're showing it to their friends.
I wouldn't call Brian a skinny twerp. I would say that was a prime Danny Seckel role.
Well, I thought that Fitz was a prime Danny Seckel role.
I got the names mixed up.
I was going to say the same thing. I was like, yeah,
okay.
He's a real Danny Seckel type. And
Fitz is a real Danny Seckel type.
So their friends are like, yeah, your comic sucks. Don't quit your day jobs. And they all head into school. Before they all get in, Lexi reminds them that it's Sarah's birthday, and they have to plan a birthday, not tell her about it. And Fitz, being an artist, I guess, has to draw a card, but no Groovy Ghoulies on the card. Because she's sick
creepo monsters.
of his creepo monster Groovy Ghoulies. There's a jock bully who grabs the comic book and throws it to a hobo who happens to be Angus Scrim, apparently.
Amazing.
Didn't really look like him, but...
Amazing. A young Angus Scrim.
Young, ancient hobo Angus Scrim.
A mere 70 years young. When I found out that the hobo on campus was Angus Scrim, I was like, God damn, this might be the greatest show of all time.
Big hobo on campus. And Angus Scrim hobo is like, got any change? And they're like, nah. And then they go into school. So they're at home later that evening. They're drawing a new comic book, trying to come up with some cool new Groovy Ghoulies. And Brian throws ink all over literally every scrap of paper that Fitz owns. And so they're like, well, guess we got to go out and buy some more paper. So they go out into the night on their bicycles, and they encounter the hobo again. And Fitz is like, hey, there's the hobo again. I might as well give him some money. And he's like, one good turn deserves another. You want a sketchbook? And they're like, okay, cool. So then he, like, takes the sketchbook home, and he draws the birthday card with a weird monster.
Impossible Vanish with the creepy hobo.
Does he impossible vanish? I missed that part.
Yes.
And I watched the episode twice.
And a flash of lightning.
And he draws a monster in the sketchbook, and it comes to life and, like, attacks Linda Cardellini.
Happy birthday, Sarah!
It's like a happy birthday
It's a
card
happy birthday monster on roller skates that throws a cake at her immediately. And then Fitz remembers Lexi saying, no corpuscular chromosomal creatures.
No creepo monsters.
No creepo monsters. And so he tears up the card, and then over at Linda Saralini's house, it vanishes.
So I would like to interject at this point. We've seen our first monster. Phenomenal.
A lot of good creatures in this episode, I will say that much.
Incredible creature design, suit, makeup.
Yeah.
That one creature would blow the budget of Are You Afraid of the Dark out of the water for like 5 episodes.
I feel like they must have gotten them from somewhere else or something. So the next day, back at school, Sarah tells Fitz about the monster, and he's like, did it have roller skates? Was it a happy birthday monster? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, Then Brian and Fitz go to class, and Brian borrows a piece of paper from the sketch pad. He idly doodles a giant hand grabbing the teacher, and it actually happens in real life. Fitz grabs the paper and tears it up, and the hand vanishes. And then Fitz is like, They decide to test Fitz's theory about the sketchbook bringing monsters to life by drawing a hideous, horrible, groovy ghoulie, and not a pot of gold or like a naked lady or something like that. Or a puppy or a kitten.
Yeah, we had previously discussed this in Corman's Calamities, where it's like, we got to know if this really works. Let's draw the most hideous murderous monster we can think of.
Because the director of the episode had a monster puppet on standby that he could get out of his closet. So they're looking around for the monster, and no monster is in sight. But suddenly, 2 hands grab them from behind, and they turn around, and they're like, whoa, Principal Pussman. It is at this point that I have to digress and say, the first time I watched the episode, I was only like half paying attention. And when Principal Pussman came out, that's when like my focus like fully locked in. And I was like, wait a minute, Principal Pussman? Is he a zombie? Did they draw Principal Pussman the zombie in the sketchbook? And then I kind of looked around and I realized, wait a minute, they're in like a weird monster school. There's like
you just noticed this?
We're halfway through the episode and I just realized like the school is all run down and there's spider webs everywhere.
No, it's not run down. It's in like a
It's like a haunted house.
Castle. Yes, the entire school is a haunted house.
But the kids, with the exception of Linda Cardellini, who's like a sort of goth, all the kids are just total normal regular kids. So I was like, what the fuck are all these normal like high school kids, happy-go-lucky humans doing at a weird monster school with holes in the walls and spider webs everywhere?
Because high school is a scary place when you're a normal kid.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yes.
Boo. So Principal Pussman tells them they gotta fuck off or whatever. Off in the cafeteria or the kitchen, the test monster does appear and attacks the lunch lady guy, who's also some kind of monster or something. Or just gross.
He's just a gross.
He's like a human monster.
Fry cook.
So then they go into the boiler room or something, and they talk to like a weird janitor guy. The weird janitor is like, no, the book is neither good nor evil. It is chaotic neutral. It is all about the drawer. And they're like, yeah, good point. And he's like,
You will draw me, Sultan of the world, power of the universe, in the palm of my hand.
And they draw him with no mouth and then leave him to die. In class, Fitz draws the hot girl in school making out with him, and she does come over and make out with him. Then her boyfriend, Bully, I think it's the same Bully from the beginning, intercedes, and Fitz draws him as an old man and knocks him over.
Kirk old.
It's just that it's like a cheating, because he's not a good enough artist to get it across that it's that.
Well, no,
guy.
it's like a political cartoon where you just write what it is directly on the thing.
This will be great for my expose.
This will be great for the expose.
And then the teacher, Mr. Mukoski, who's just a weirdo, rips up the drawing, and Fitz, rightfully, again, quite ahead of its time, gets accused by the school hottie of assault.
Correction! It's none of a kind.
So Fitz, in anger, draws like a weird fish monster, and the bell rings. On his way out of class, the bully trips him, and he loses his sketchbook. It goes flying across the room, and he doesn't realize it. The fish monster comes to life and gets the book and draws like 1,000 monsters. Later, all the kids and a bunch of randos are waiting in the cafeteria to surprise Sarah, Linda Cardellini, for her birthday. When she doesn't show up, they all go look. Well, the main cast goes to look for her, and the other background actors are like, fuck this, peace out, we're all leaving. So they all leave. Lexi finds Sarah lamenting that nobody remembered her birthday, and then the rest of them find them, and they all go back to the cafeteria. And when they turn on the lights, all the monsters that the fish monster drew go surprise, which was very nice of them. And then they attack, and then they defeat all the monsters with sodas and kung fu and a giant vacuum cleaner. And I was like, what? Why would a vacuum cleaner defeat monsters? It's because he got the book back and drew a special monster fighting vacuum, which sucks them all in. Then they burn the sketchbook, and he's like, well, I guess my adventures are over. And they're like, not so fast. I saved one page, and I drew you a proper birthday card. And she reads the birthday card, and it all comes to life, but all it manifests are balloons and some streamers, and she's like,
now this is what I call a birthday.
But there are still no other kids anywhere. It's just the four of them. I mean, I guess that's all that matters, your core group.
That's right.
The end.
A lot of energy, a lot going on. I was really surprised that Fitz drew the girl he was crushing on making out with him, because that's something that we haven't seen.
It's the only logical thing.
In any of our other magical cartoon shows, not even Freddy's Nightmares, went that far. But then the extra twist, to have one of the monsters get the sketch pad and draw an army of monsters, inspired, brilliant. Better than the Ghastly Grinner.
Very weird, very strange. Our episode today will end in a draw.
No ratings this week because we're going to talk about Comic-Con 2022.
Zoom! We finally got back to Comic-Con.
It's been a long 3 years wait. It really sucked when it got canceled the last 2 years, but totally understandable. So it's kind of weird, kind of bittersweet, going to such a dense, crowded event during a resurgence of COVID was really weird. So there was a lot of masking. Thankfully, it wasn't that hot this year. So we did the showroom floor. A lot to see, not a lot to do.
Yeah, I kind of whiffed the showroom floor this year. I didn't get any sketches. I didn't do any of my favorite, like wandering and accidentally bumping into artists that I like. Although I've been burned so many times that perhaps it's for the best. Friday, we drove down, got in a standby line almost immediately for the Dungeons & Dragons Tavern experience, which we were told all the reservations were sold out, but they said, yeah, there's a standby line. It seems to be moving pretty quickly. And we're like, okay, whatever. And we got into the tavern in like 20 minutes, 25 minutes tops.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Dungeons & Dragons Tavern was one of the highlights of the whole week.
They decorated it up really nicely as like a medieval fantasy tavern.
Yeah, there was like a little museum of beholders and mimics and stuff as you walked down the hallway into the bar. All the staff was dressed up in sort of medieval regalia. They were singing folk songs.
They handed out free Moscow mules.
And they were all in these glowing green D&D mugs. The walls of the tavern were not only decorated with axes, swords, morning stars, things like that, but they also had these sort of animated posters of the cast of the movie. So, like Hugh Grant was like flipping a coin and like holding out a torch and stuff like that. They led us all in a rousing chorus of some kind of shanty, and then the roof started to quake. The chandeliers started to swing back and forth. It was at around that time that we saw one entire side of the tavern was like a video screen, and a dragon flew by and landed and roared into the tavern.
It breathed all kind of smoke into the tavern and
Yeah,
everything.
it was breathing smoke on us, and the walls and the ceiling were shaking.
They did a real good job.
And then they hustled us out, and
We were like, maybe we can sneak a second drink, and they were like, okay, everybody out. I think we headed straight to the harbor just to see if there was any Adult Swim stuff, which is our typical destination, and there was nothing, absolutely no Adult Swim presence this year except for one tiny little kiosk, which was advertising the Adult Swim Festival, I believe, right? If you peeked inside of it.
yeah.
So we were like, whatever. So we got in line for the Voodoo Ranger craft brewery pirate ship, which I guess just always exists and sails around and parties.
So we waited for about 30, 45 minutes. It was the middle of the day. We're starting to come down off of our glowing green ales. But we eventually made our way on deck, grabbed a couple beers. We didn't realize we were playing with fire, because some of these Voodoo Ranger beers are 9% alcohol by volume. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And we definitely saw one or two people that were overserved, because unlike the Dungeons and Dragons Tavern, they weren't kicking people off the ship. They weren't keel hauling people.
You were allowed to stay on as long as you want, and
Exactly.
it cost us extra time trying to get in.
So after the highlights of the D&D Tavern and the Voodoo Ranger pirate ship,
We did go into the show floor, and I think probably the highlight in there on Friday was we went to play Monster Hunter, and we just we're shooting the shit with the attendee, and she was super nice, and that was really fun just to be joking around with some stranger.
shout out to April.
And then we sat down to play the game, and instead we just continued chewing the fat with April. And then we played for 5 minutes, and I certainly couldn't figure out what to do, so left there. And I think we just kind of wandered around a bit, and we went to get dinner at the Werewolf bar.
Oh, yeah.
Because Jeff was like, Werewolf bar, fuck yeah.
So I have been to San Diego previously, and looking around for where to eat, and what should my wondering eyes see but an establishment called the Werewolf Tavern. And I was like, God as my witness, I will not rest until I eat at Werewolf. I didn't get to eat there on that trip, so when I was there with Ryan and Drew, I was like, guys, don't worry, I got this. We are all eating good at Werewolf tonight.
And it was hands down our longest wait at the con all weekend.
It's brutal. Yeah, I was a little too close to the Gaslamp District. A lot of people smoking cigarettes
Yeah.
outside.
And it's always so funny because over the Comic-Con weekend in the Gaslamp, all of the Comic-Con people begin to intermingle, especially as the night goes on, with the club kids and the fancy pantses. Such a bizarre mixture of people.
Yeah, San Diego has very little to do with geek culture, with the exception of the week of Comic-Con. And to prove my point, you can go to the Werewolf Tavern that has nothing to do with werewolves.
Or very little at them. I think they had a Teen Wolf 2, which is topical for our episode, rug on the floor.
And they had a drawing of a hand touching like a wolf hand out front. That's it.
And that was pretty much it. So then after that, we decided that we had had so much fun going to see Spider-Man in 2019 that we would go and see Thor, Love and Thunder, because none of us had seen it yet. So we went to the AMC. I no longer have stubs, but no one was in line this time.
We were all big fans of Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah, loved it.
And we just couldn't wait to get our hands on the next
Wrap around some more Thor.
Taika Waititi banger.
And for me, again, personally, the less said about that, the better.
Yeah. Not as good as Ragnarok. Moving on.
So then, yes, we got back to our motel. We got to our motel for the first time.
Around midnight, yeah.
Yeah, and when we walked in, I was like, yeah, this is pretty nice looking. Until you, got a little closer, and there were some blood stains on the sheets and some weird dirt stains on the walls and some goo on the desk, and
there were cigarette burns
all on the comforters, even though it's a non-smoking room.
The room stank like an ashtray.
Yeah.
The room stank like someone used in someone's armpit as an ashtray. And that's just the outside part. When you go into the bathroom, it gets worse because the sink wasn't draining and the shower wasn't draining. And very, very soon after the first shower was taken, there was like half a foot of standing murky water.
Saturday morning, we got a lovely, if somewhat expensive, breakfast at some posh cafe. Saturday's a bit of a blur for me. I think we went back to the show floor for a little bit. We saw the Krapopolis panel with Dan Harmon and a bunch of actors and stuff who were like, maybe I was projecting, but I was like, man, these guys are just in it for the paycheck, especially Matt Berry. He was like, I don't know, say something funny. Yes, it's a good show, and I like it. We played a bunch of pinball in the pinball lounge.
Yeah, we wandered through all the game rooms and arcades, and then we decided we would come back before the Masquerade.
So then around 8 p.m., after whatever we had been doing, we went to see the spillover broadcasts of the Masquerade.
Yeah, we'd done it in 2019 for the first time.
Yeah,
and
I was adamant that we do it again.
And in 2019, there was some cosplayer doing a skit, and then she fell, and it was, pretty awkward for everyone. So there we are in 2022, and I turn to Ryan and I say, we're not leaving until somebody eats it.
Did not have to wait long.
No. Soon after my proclamation, they brought out Cosmic Ghostrider. This was sort of Chekhov's edge of the stage because they had a little remote control car zooming around in one of the earlier skits, and it just like flew off the edge of the stage. So we knew it was like perilously close to the runway.
Tiny little stage.
And they brought out Cosmic Ghostrider. You may remember, faithful listener, one of my dream costumes, my impossible costumes, is like a Ghostrider costume. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. I want to see just how good
I couldn't
Ghostrider
wait.
Costume can be.
I was like, Ghostrider, how are they going to do the flames? How are they going to do it? Because that's what Jeff wanted to do.
And so this guy took like one step onto stage and then just vanished into darkness. And they're like, up next, number 19, Beauty and the Beast.
And then,
oh shit.
We did see like a couple minutes or a second, 30 seconds later, two people on either side of Ghostrider like carrying him limping down off in front of the stage, off like into the back or whatever. And
the audience was like, do over, let him go. And the judges were just like, moving on. It's like, oh, I don't think that guy's getting back on stage.
No, he broke every bone in his body. He fell right off the stage, like complete. He didn't just like trip and then get back up. He just face planted.
He just plunged into the void, landed on that little remote control car.
But he did end up winning. I went back to look at the prizes, and he won like some honorable mention or judge's choice or something.
Unfortunately, it was posthumous. It was in the in
He's
memoriam.
a real Ghostrider now.
Yeah.
One last ride. Sunday, we just went straight to the harbor. We were like, F everything. We're going to go see some boats. And we saw some museums, some submarines, some tall ships.
We were on this steamship, and I was looking at a little steam-powered clock or something. And this old feller wandered over, and he's like, yeah, somebody tried to steal it. Craziest thing. And so we were kind of spellbound by this old codger. He was a docent who worked at the Maritime Museum, and he felt like talking, and he kind of took a shine to us. And we're like, well, all right, we can't not listen to this guy. He's this crusty old salty dog. He's spouting some wisdom, and he's like, oh, you want to see the engine room, the boiler room? And we're like, well, sure. So we toddled down to this massive boiler room, like just floor to ceiling, wall-to-wall pipes, cranks, pistons,
Levers, knobs.
It's insane because this is like 100-year-old steamship, and this dude like shows us how to like flush every valve and drive every crankshaft, and he's going around and turning on every single device. And there's like women and children kind of wandering through, and he's kind of
storming through, more like.
Yeah, he's kind of squinting, kind of glaring. This guy had a real kinship with Ryan because he hated people. He was referred to all kids as screamers. He had some choice lines for women. He was 96, I think, and he said when he turned 100, he was gonna retire to go chase women.
I mean, in his defense, those kids did absolutely thunder down those metal stairs, like screaming and stomping.
I mean, there were kids inside a big steamship. They were excited.
You feel like any kind of parent would be like, okay, like take it easy, guys. You know, this like respect the area. They could have easily fallen and killed themselves.
That's true.
This
did look like a death trap, and how
they could have gone straight into the inner workings because there were no fences, no guide rails, nothing.
Yeah, it would be returned to the good old days when they literally used to grind up 12-year-olds in the boilers.
And we at the end, I mean, this guy literally gave us the tour of everything, showed us everything, and eventually we were like, how did you figure all this stuff out? And he's like, I just looked around, played around.
Yeah, he was like a World War II vet, but he was just this funny, crotchety guy. He sort of held court for about 30 minutes, and then we checked out the rest of the ship, which was totally awesome.
It was really cool.
And then we went over to the Star of India, which is like a great old British whaling ship.
We went on to the Californian, the Star of India, the USS Dolphin, which was a submarine under the water, kind of.
I mean, it was a real treat for those of us who were tall and or claustrophobic.
Then we headed back to the convention center because Jeff wanted to cover the Disney cosplay meetup for Creepy Kingdom.
Yeah, I was submitting some photos for creepykingdom.com. I could not find this Disney meetup. Eventually, we found it, and it was way, way, way far away. Like, the whole thing would have come and gone, and we just would have missed it. We ran over there, got a couple photos, and then I'm done. You know, I've got all the shots I need, so I walk away and start uploading them to the Dropbox, and Ryan is like, oh, there was a wedding proposal.
Jeff took a couple pictures, and then he was like, let's fucking get out of here. And as soon as he walked away, somebody proposed to his girlfriend.
Ryan got it all on camera.
I think I was only sticking around, really, because, in your defense, because one of the cosplay women's boobs kept popping out, and I was intrigued. I was like, oh, it's going to pop all the way out. I gotta see it when it does. Never did, but came close a time or two. And then luckily, lo and behold,
you did get to see
got the proposal.
Some matrimonial bliss.
Yeah. Then we went to Old Town San Diego.
We were ready to bid farewell to Comic-Con, as we always do, with first decompressing in the surreal environment of Old Town. But what this meant was that we hit Old Town earlier than ever before.
We were there so early that the Tinsmith was open, and I was so excited because if you recall, in our last Comic-Con episode from 2019, I even say, like, the Tinsmith was closed, the Root Beer Float was closed. I was so disappointed. I was like, oh my god, the Tinsmith! And we walked into the Tinsmith, and there was no tinsmithing going on. It was just a curio shop where he was selling lanterns and Christmas ornaments and shit. Oh, what a letdown.
A bit of a letdown, but it's time you found out.
Yeah, at least I finally know.
The tinsmith did. But before he could get too heartbroken, we did end up wandering over to the blacksmith shop. Something which I never knew existed. It was open, and we had it all to ourselves.
Until some lousy screamers came over.
Yeah. But we did get to talk to the blacksmith for a good long while and watch him, like, forging stuff. They were showing us
the giant bellows,
the furnaces, the different types of metal, the brands from the old ranches. It was freaking awesome. Yeah, it was so cool being in Old Town while stuff was open. So we swung through, the candy shops. Ryan and Drew got their root beer floats.
We finally got to go into the carriage museum.
With minutes to spare.
Yeah, they were closing in 5 minutes, so we had to hustle in and out, but have never seen in there before.
I've never, ever, for 20 years I've been going to Old Town. I've never been inside that frickin' carriage museum. And it was awesome. So it totally buoyed our spirits.
Yeah.
It was such an
As
awesome
Old Town usually
way
does.
To end our Comic-Con weekend.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. And so, another Comic-Con opens and closes. Yay, like the comic books of old.
Will there be another Comic-Con in our future? It's uncertain.
I will surely rerun to next Comic-Con for my life.
Excelsior.